Deep in the heart of Kentucky, hidden behind twisting backroads and fog-covered hills, lie the remains of towns that time forgot, places once full of life, now silent and haunting. From abandoned coal camps to forgotten river settlements, these ghost towns still stand today, holding eerie secrets, tragic stories, and whispers from the past. Stay with us as we uncover the top 10 creepiest ghost towns in Kentucky still standing today, if you dare. If you love exploring forgotten places, hit like and subscribe for more haunting stories every week. Number 1. Blue Heron, McCreary County, Kentucky. Blue Heron is one of those forgotten coal towns hidden deep in McCreary County, Kentucky. I heard stories about it for years. People said that when the sun goes down and the wind starts blowing through the valley, you can almost hear the whispers of the miners who once lived there. So, one cool evening, I decided to go see it for myself. Driving down the narrow mountain road, the sound of the Big South Fork River echoed in the distance. The air smelled damp, like old stone and rusted metal. When I finally reached Blue Heron, I saw nothing but shadows of what used to be a busy mining camp. The wooden houses were long gone, but strange metal frames stood where buildings once stood, like ghosts of the past frozen in time. A local man I met in Stearns told me he had worked there as a young boy. Every year, he still visits the same spot near the old coal tipple. He said that sometimes at night, you can hear music drifting through the air, a harmonica tune the miners used to play after long shifts underground. He swore he heard it once again, years after the mines shut down. When he turned to look, no one was there. I walked across the old bridge that night. Each step made a hollow echo, like someone was walking right behind me. The trees were still, but I could feel the air move around me, soft, cold, and heavy. For a second, I thought I saw a light flicker near the old mine entrance, but it disappeared as quickly as it came. Maybe it was just my imagination, or maybe it wasn't. Blue Heron wasn't just a mining town, it was a home for hundreds of families from 1937 to 1962. When the mines closed, the people left, and nature slowly took everything back. Now, it's part of the Big South Fork National River and Recreation Area. The park has built steel frames where the old houses, school, and church once stood. When you walk through them, you can still hear recorded voices of the people who once lived there, telling their stories in their own words. Standing there, surrounded by darkness and silence, I realized Blue Heron isn't completely gone. The buildings may have vanished, but the memories, the echoes of those who lived and worked there, still linger in the cold mountain air. Number 2. Airdrie, Muhlenberg County, Kentucky. Airdrie, Kentucky, sits quietly along the Green River in Muhlenberg County. Today, it's just an overgrown patch of land with a few stone ruins, but almost 170 years ago, this place was full of life, dreams, and fire. It was meant to be a city of iron, a Scottish dream that never came true. The story began in the 1850s when a wealthy Scottish man named Robert Alexander bought the land. He believed the hills of Kentucky could be the next big iron industry. He brought skilled workers all the way from Scotland and named the new settlement Airdrie, after his hometown back in Scotland. For a short while, smoke rose from the furnaces, wagons moved on muddy roads, and families built homes hoping for a better life. But the iron was poor quality, the river flooded often, and by 1857, the great dream of Airdrie had died out. The workers left, leaving behind only chimneys, stones, and silence. Years later, people started calling it Kentucky's Forgotten Iron City. When I visited Airdrie for the first time, I didn't expect much. The GPS showed nothing but trees and farmland. But when I got closer, I saw it, a massive stone furnace standing tall in the middle of the woods. Moss covered the stones, birds nested in the cracks, and vines wrapped around what used to be a furnace stack. It was both beautiful and sad at the same time. I walked around, feeling the crunch of gravel under my shoes. The air was cool and still. Then, I heard a faint sound, almost like the ringing of metal. Maybe it was just the wind blowing through the cracks, or maybe something else. Locals say that on quiet nights, if you stand near the old furnace, you can hear the sound of hammers echoing in the distance, like the ghosts of the Scottish workers still trying to finish their job. As the sun began to set, the old stone walls glowed orange, and for a moment, it felt like the fire had come back to life. The ruins of Airdrie may not tell their story out loud, but if you stand there long enough, you can almost feel the heartbeat of the town that tried so hard to live, and refused to be completely forgotten. Number 3. Creelsboro, Russell County, Kentucky. Creelsboro, Kentucky, is a tiny place tucked along the Cumberland River in Russell County. Today, only a few families live there, and the town looks quiet, almost frozen in time. But many years ago, this was one of the busiest river towns in southern Kentucky, full of travelers, traders, and the sound of steamboats echoing through the valley. Back in the 1800s, Creelsboro was alive. The river was the lifeline of the town. Boats came and went, carrying goods, people, and stories from faraway places. There were shops, a post office, and even a hotel where visitors stayed the night before their next river trip. It was a small town, but it had big energy. Then, when new roads and highways came along, people stopped using the river. The boats disappeared, businesses closed, and slowly Creelsboro faded away. When I first went there, I didn't expect to feel much. But as soon as I walked near the river, I felt something strange, like the air still remembered the sound of old engines and laughter. The most famous thing in Creelsboro is a massive natural rock arch called Creelsboro Arch, or the Rock House. It stands tall beside the river like a silent guard, watching the town's past slip away. Locals say that at night, if you listen closely under the arch, you can hear faint whispers, maybe just the wind, or maybe echoes from the old river days. A man I met there, Mr. Daniels, told me his grandfather used to run a small store near the dock. He said when he was a boy, he'd sit outside and listen to the steamboats whistle in the distance. The whole ground would shake, he said with a smile, and now it's just crickets and wind. Standing there beside him, I could see what he meant. The silence was almost too heavy. As the sun went down, the golden light hit the old buildings and the giant rock arch, making everything glow. I could imagine how alive it must have been once. Music from the riverboats, children running by the water, people shouting greetings. Now, Creelsboro stands quiet, holding its memories deep within the river's slow, endless flow. Number 4. Paradise, Muhlenberg County, Kentucky. Paradise, Kentucky, the name sounds peaceful, almost heavenly. But when you stand there today, it's hard not to feel the sadness that still hangs in the air. The town of Paradise once sat quietly along the Green River in Muhlenberg County. It was small but full of life, farmers, miners, families, and children playing near the riverbank. Then one day, all of that was gone. Back in the early 1900s, Paradise was just another little Kentucky town. It had a church, a few stores, and a post office. People lived simple lives, close to nature. The Green River was their pride, clean, calm, and full of fish. But when the coal industry grew in western Kentucky, everything changed. In the 1950s and 60s, the Tennessee Valley Authority, TVA, built a massive coal-burning power plant nearby. The air turned thick with smoke, and the water turned dark with ash. Paradise slowly stopped feeling like paradise. Locals tell stories of how, in the early mornings, a fine layer of black dust would settle over the houses and gardens. Children would wake up coughing, and the once green trees turned gray. Finally, in the early 1960s, TVA decided to buy out the remaining homes and shut the town down completely. Most families had no choice but to leave. By the late 60s, nothing was left but a few graves and the memory of a lost town. When I visited what's left of Paradise, I found the old cemetery still standing on a small hill overlooking the river. The headstones were covered in moss, and wildflowers grew between them. The power plant's tall stacks stood in the distance, silent and cold. The contrast was haunting, a place once filled with life now replaced by metal, smoke, and silence. An older man fishing by the river told me his parents had lived there before TVA came. He said, it wasn't perfect, but it was home. The air smelled like grass, not coal. He looked out at the water, his voice fading. They called it paradise, and for us, it really was. Now, only the name remains, Paradise, Kentucky. The people are gone, the homes are gone, but the memories still float quietly on the green river, whispering about the town that truly lived up to its name, before it disappeared. Number 5 Golden Pond, Trigg County, Kentucky. Golden Pond, Kentucky, the name itself feels warm and peaceful, like sunlight reflecting on still water. But behind that beautiful name lies a story of struggle, displacement, and ghosts of a town that nature has taken back. Today, when you drive through land between the lakes, you won't see much of Golden Pond. Just trees, quiet roads, and the faint remains of what once was a close-knit community. Golden Pond began as a small farming and logging town in the late 1800s. The land was rich, the people hard-working, and the community proud. It was named after a small pond nearby that would glow golden in the sunset, a beautiful sight that everyone remembered. For decades, families lived here peacefully. There were schools, stores, a few churches, and homes surrounded by rolling hills and oak trees. But the story of Golden Pond took a dark turn in the 1960s. The government decided to create the land between the lake's National Recreation Area, a huge public park. To do that, they forced hundreds of families from their homes, the same homes their grandparents had built. The people of Golden Pond didn't want to leave. They fought, protested, and cried, but in the end, they had no choice. Their land was bought out, their houses destroyed, and their town was erased from the map. When I visited the area, I stopped by the spot where Golden Pond once stood. There's a small sign and a visitor center carrying the town's name, that's all. The air was quiet, and the forest had completely covered what used to be streets and gardens. I walked through the woods, and for a moment, it felt like I could still hear the sound of laughter, maybe from children playing near the old pond that gave the town its name. A local park ranger told me that even today, some former residents still come back every year. They walk through the trees, stand where their houses once were, and tell stories of the good days before the land was taken. They call it Golden Pond, he said softly, but for many, it's a place of both beauty and heartbreak. Standing there, surrounded by silence and golden sunlight slipping through the trees, I understood what he meant. Golden Pond isn't just gone, it's sleeping, quietly hidden under the leaves, waiting for someone to remember it. Number 6 Kyrock, Edmonson County, Kentucky. Kyrock, Kentucky, once a proud little company town deep in Edmonson County, now lies mostly forgotten under years of dust, silence, and wild grass. The name Kyrock came from the Kentucky Rock Asphalt Company, which built the town in the early 1900s. Back then, this place was full of life. Workers came from all around to mine and process natural asphalt, and for decades, Kyrock stood as a symbol of hard work and small-town pride. The company owned everything: the houses, the school, the church, even the store. Families lived close together, and every morning, you could hear the factory whistle echo across the valley, calling men to work. Kids would run down the dirt roads, women would hang laundry on the lines, and coal trains would pass in the distance, shaking the ground. For many, Kyrock wasn't just a town, it was home. But when the asphalt business started to fall in the 1950s, so did Kyrock. Jobs disappeared, families began to move away, and soon the laughter and noise that once filled the streets turned into silence. By the mid-1960s, the company shut down completely. The school closed, the church doors locked, and slowly nature began to take over what people had left behind. When I visited Kyrock, the air felt heavy, not scary, but full of memories. The old elementary school still stands, its bricks faded and windows cracked. A lonely water tower rises above the trees like a ghost watching over what's left. You can still see the remains of foundations, bits of asphalt, and rusted pipes poking through the ground. The forest has claimed most of it now, wrapping every building in green. An old man I met at a nearby gas station told me his parents used to work at the plant. It was everything to us, he said. When Kyrock died, it was like losing a family. His voice broke a little as he looked toward the hills. Sometimes at night, when the wind blows just right, I swear I can still hear the factory whistle. Standing there, I could believe it. The sound of the wind moving through the empty streets felt almost like a song, a reminder of the town that once worked, dreamed, and lived in the shadow of the asphalt plant that gave it its name, Kyrock. Number 7 Packard, Whitley County, Kentucky. Packard, Kentucky, hidden deep in the thick woods of Whitley County, is one of those ghost towns that still feels alive, even though no one lives there anymore. If you take the winding road near the Cumberland Falls area and follow the old dirt trails, you'll eventually find what's left of Packard, a few stone walls, rusted metal parts, and broken foundations, half swallowed by the forest. In the early 1900s, Packard was built around the booming lumber and coal industries. It was a busy place, trains would roll through the valley carrying timber, and the smell of coal smoke filled the air. The L&N Railroad ran right through the town, connecting Packard to the rest of Kentucky. People worked hard here. Men labored in the mines and sawmills, women cooked for families and helped at the local church, and kids played along the tracks that now lie covered in weeds. But as the coal seams began to run dry and the lumber business slowed, the people had no reason to stay. By the 1950s, most families had left. The trains stopped coming, and slowly the forest started to take back the land. Today, you can barely tell a town ever existed here, only a few crumbling stone foundations, an old bridge, and the faint outline of a road remain. When I visited Packard, it was eerily quiet. The only sounds were the wind and the crunch of leaves under my shoes. I remember finding what looked like an old house foundation, covered in moss. I placed my hand on the cold stone and tried to imagine the lives that once filled this valley, laughter, the clatter of train wheels, the shouts of children chasing each other near the mill. A local historian I met in Williamsburg told me that on foggy nights, people have claimed to hear distant train whistles echoing through the hills, even though the tracks have been gone for decades. He smiled when he said it, but his eyes held that strange seriousness you can't fake. Standing in that quiet valley, I could almost hear it too, the ghost of a train, rolling through the heart of Packard, carrying memories of a town that worked hard, lived fully, and then vanished into the Kentucky woods. Number 8 Barthel, McCreary County, Kentucky. Barthel, Kentucky, once a proud coal mining town, sits hidden deep in the mountains of McCreary County. Founded in 1902 by the Stearns Coal and Lumber Company, it was one of the first coal camps in the area. Back then, Barthel was full of energy and life. The sound of pickaxes and carts filled the air, and coal dust hung over the valley like a dark mist. Families lived in small wooden houses built along the hillside. There was a company store, a post office, and even a school. Every morning, miners would gather at the mouth of the coal mine, lamps flickering on their helmets, ready to descend into the darkness for another long day underground. Life was tough but steady. This town ran on hard work, community spirit, and the promise that the mines would never run dry. But nothing lasts forever. When the coal company shut down operations in the 1950s, Barthel quickly turned into a ghost of itself. Families moved away, the school closed, and nature began reclaiming the land. The buildings that once stood strong started to decay, their wood turning gray and weak from the weather. Years later, when I visited Barthel, I was surprised to see that some of it had been brought back to life. Unlike most ghost towns, Barthel has been partially restored as a living history site. You can walk through the old mining camp, see the original mine entrance, and even stay overnight in cabins built from the same timbers that once housed the miners. But even with the restoration, the place carries a strange quietness. Walking through the camp at dusk, I felt like time had stopped. The creak of old wooden floors, the distant sound of wind through the trees, everything felt like echoes of the past. One caretaker told me that sometimes, late at night, he hears footsteps outside when no one's there. "It's probably just the mountain settling," he said with a half smile, "but it always feels like the old miners checking on their home." Standing near the mine entrance, I could almost picture them, men covered in coal dust, lanterns glowing, walking back after a long shift. Barthel may not be completely forgotten, but its ghosts still linger in the shadows, reminding us of the hard lives and strong spirits that once powered the heart of Kentucky's coal country. Number 9. Bell's Mines, Crittenden County, Kentucky. Bell's Mines, Kentucky, a quiet ghost town in Crittenden County, carries with it a deep sense of mystery and loss. Long ago, this small community stood proudly near the banks of the Ohio River. In the early 1800s, it was founded around a rich lead and fluorspar mining operation owned by a man named John Bell. For decades, Bell's Mines thrived. Miners worked deep underground, and families built homes close to the rolling hills. There was a church, a school, and a small cemetery where generations now rest, reminders of lives once lived in the rhythm of the mines. The town's story, however, took a darker turn. By the mid-1900s, the mining stopped, and the land changed hands. When the Tennessee Valley Authority, TVA, began buying up property in the area for future projects, many families were forced to leave their homes behind. What was once a close-knit community slowly emptied out, leaving behind only ruins, overgrown roads, and echoes of what used to be. When I first went looking for Bell's Mines, it wasn't easy to find. The old roads leading there are cracked and almost hidden by weeds. The forest has swallowed much of the land, and only a few stone foundations remain, silent witnesses to a place time forgot. I met a local man from nearby Marion who remembered visiting his grandparents there as a child. "It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other," he said softly. "Now, it's just ghosts and trees." Many people in the area say Bell's Mines is haunted. Some claim to hear the faint sound of mining tools clanging deep underground, or whispers near the old cemetery at night. One visitor once told me they saw a dim lantern light moving slowly through the woods, as if a miner was still searching for his way home. Standing among the ruins, with the sound of the river in the distance, I could feel that strange pull of history, the sense that life here never truly ended, it just faded away. The wind carried the faint smell of earth and river water, and for a moment, it almost felt like the town was breathing again. Bell's Mines may be gone from the maps, but its spirit still lingers, buried deep beneath the Kentucky soil. Number 10. Bongelico, Whitley County, Kentucky. Bongelico, Kentucky, a name that once stood for hard work, family, and the American coal dream, now lies silent among the hills of Whitley County. It was founded in the early 1900s as a coal mining town, built by the Bongelico Coal Company. Back then, it was a thriving community, filled with rows of wooden houses, small stores, a church, and a school where children laughed and played after long days of mountain life. The mines were the heartbeat of Bongelico. Every morning, the whistle would blow, and men would march into the dark tunnels, their lamps flickering as they disappeared underground. Coal dust covered everything, the air, the porches, even the clothes people wore. But to the families who lived there, it was home. Life was tough, yet simple. Neighbors helped each other, shared meals, and built a world where hope still existed, even in the shadow of the mines. But when the coal company shut down operations in the 1930s, the town's pulse began to fade. Without the mines, there were no jobs. Families packed what little they had and left, chasing work elsewhere. Within a few years, Bongelico became a memory, a handful of empty houses and the echo of what once was. The land was slowly reclaimed by the forest, and the laughter of children was replaced by the whisper of the wind through the trees. When I visited the site of Bongelico, only fragments remained, the foundation of a store, an old mine entrance caved in by time, and a scattering of forgotten graves covered in moss. A local man in his 70s told me his father was born there. They said the nights were the best part, he told me. The whole town would gather on porches, play music, tell stories. It wasn't rich, but it was alive. He paused, looking toward the hills. Now, you can still feel them sometimes, the miners, the families, all of it, like the town's spirit never really left. Standing in that quiet place, I understood what he meant. Bon Jellicoe isn't just gone, it's sleeping. And if you listen closely, you can still hear the distant hum of life that once filled this lost Kentucky town, tucked away forever in the folds of Whitley County's hills. Which of these ghost towns gave you chills the most? Tell us in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon, because more dark secrets of forgotten places are coming soon.